Hello, I'm Brandy, and in this video we're going to be taking this cute little sofa table and giving it an updated look. So I found this off of Facebook Marketplace. I think it was $15, and I went and picked it up right away. I just love the style of it. I love the detail on the legs and on the front of the piece as well. And so I wanted to experiment with this one and kind of do something a little bit different than I normally do and try a dry brushing technique that I've seen some other painters do in different YouTube videos that have inspired me to get out my creative side and get to work on these cute little detailed pieces. Now, the first thing I did was gave this whole table a thorough cleaning. So just some Dawn dish soap and water, and I scrubbed it down really good. And then after I had scrubbed it all down, I went back through with a damp wet rag just to kind of wipe it clean. It's super important to always clean your piece, just because you don't want any of that dirtiness to be stuck underneath any paint that you put on top. So cleaning is always the first step for me, unless there's hardware to take off, but for this table there was no hardware to take off, so I was able to get right to cleaning. After that, I took some 150 grit sandpaper and I went over the entire piece with the 150 grit, and then I circled back and went over the entire piece with 220 grit just to kind of smooth things out. There were a couple little pieces or little areas where some of the prior paint, this white paint that you're seeing here, was kind of chipping up. So I wanted to make sure that I had that smooth finish before applying the paint. So after going over it with the 150 and then the 220 grit, I then circled back with some tack cloth and wiped it clean. I was planning on using a very dark paint, so I wasn't too worried about it to being perfect. It was just getting everything smoothed out so that I would get that nice smooth finish after I applied the paint. And if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to come out with new content every week, and I'm always working on a furniture project. So if you want to follow along with my journey, I would be happy to have you. Once the prep work was done, I was ready to get to painting. I used the Krylon chalky finish in the color tricorn black, and I picked this up at Lowe's. It was the first time I was using this paint, so I was a bit nervous but also excited to be trying something new. I gave it a really good stir for a couple minutes, and then I poured it into my smaller container to get started on the paint. So I just used a plain old chalk paint brush, and I started applying the first coat. And as you can see, because it's a dark color, it's a black, it gives pretty good coverage on that first layer of paint, just going from the light to dark. So I knew I was going to need multiple coats, but I was pleased to see how this was applying very smoothly. It was thick but not too thick, so very easy to work with. As I got or started going over the more detailed areas, it was less of a back and forth motion and more of a dabbing and kind of getting into those little cracks and crevices to make sure that the dark paint was definitely getting in the holes and covering up the white paint. I was really loving the dark, how it looked with the dark color. After one coat of paint had dried, this is what we were looking at. Obviously you can see the coverage is not perfect with just the one coat, but that wasn't a problem because we knew we were moving on to coat number 2, which went on just as smoothly as coat number 1, and then it just made it look that much nicer. But like I said, at this stage I was already super excited. I think just moving it or changing it from that light color to the black made a huge difference, and I was really excited about where this project was going. And this is what we were looking at after applying coat number 2, and all we needed to do was wait for it to dry, which didn't take very long. And once coat number 2 was dry, we went ahead and moved on to coat number 3. And just in case you didn't know, little baby puppies love to hang out when you're painting. It's their favorite thing to do. Sit on your lap, come check out what you're doing, and get some attention while they're at it. So once coat number 3 was dry, I was ready to start on my dry brushing method, and as you can see here, I did it thinking I was recording and I hadn't been recording. So that was a disappointment, but it's okay because there was plenty of other parts for me to show you. What I did is I used this chalk paint by Behr in the color Overcast that we had hanging around as a leftover from a previous project. So I just poured a little bit of that, tiny bit, into a little container here. And what I was doing was basically just taking this kind of thicker chip brush, I guess, putting a little bit of paint on the tip of the brush, not much, and then I was dabbing it onto a piece of cardboard. So like I said, just a very small bit of paint is what I used, and then I started to just offload it onto a piece of cardboard. I wanted as least amount of paint as possible on the brush, so wiping it onto the cardboard, dabbing it around, and then once the brush was basically mostly dry, then it would look like that, and I would be able to just lightly stroke over the details on the edges here, as well as the front. And if I felt in this situation, I felt like I had still too much paint on the brush, so I just went back to the cardboard and offloaded that paint some more, and then just gently going over it, and it really adds a lot of depth and character. And just by doing the little pieces that I had done at this point, I was so excited. I just loved it. I've seen other YouTubers out there using this method, and that's what inspired me to do that kind of style on this table, as opposed to like distressing it with sandpaper or whatnot. And I was just super excited with the way it was turning out. So I went over all of the details like this with the overcast color. I didn't go over it too much. I really just did a light coat. I figured that less is more, and if I needed more, I can always go back with more. But if I put too much on, it's going to be more difficult to take away. So I just went over it very lightly at first, along the detail on all the edges, the front, as well as the lines or the edges on the bottom and the legs as well, just to give it that nice shimmery kind of outline. And I was just so in love with it. I was super excited with the way it was turning out. I was having a hard time keeping my excitement contained, actually. I kept telling everybody, come look at this, look how cool it's coming out. So yeah, anytime that I felt like the brush was getting a little too dry, I just did the same process, put a little bit of paint, offloaded it onto the cardboard, and then continued working my way around the table. There was all this character being added. I just felt like, it would look pretty cool if I added some of the overcast onto the bottom of the legs also, and then just kind of blend it up. And so I did a little test run with one leg and figured, hey, if it doesn't turn out the way I like, I can always go back in there and paint over it with black. But I loved how it looked. So this is pretty much what we were looking at after adding all of the overcast onto all of the detail. As you can see, it looked so cool. Very, very happy with how that came out. Now, I had ordered these transfers a while back, and they had just been sitting in my office for some time, waiting for the perfect piece to use them on. And I felt like this was the perfect piece to use them on. These are ReDesign with Prima. I got them off of Instagram. I see a lot of other people using them, the transfers from ReDesign with Prima, and I love them. I am so obsessed with flowers and anything floral, so this was right up my alley for sure. This transfer actually came in 3 pieces, so it's one of those large ones, but 2 of the pieces would fit on here perfectly, just how I envisioned them fitting on here. So I was super excited. So I just started lining them up just to kind of make sure exactly where I wanted them to kind of overlap, and getting them as even as possible from the front, the back, and the edges before I started working with it. To be honest, this was the first time I was using a transfer. Very, very first time. I've seen a lot of videos about it. Like I said, I had purchased them. I don't know if I was just intimidated, but I definitely wanted to wait for a perfect piece to try. So this was it. And once I got it lined up, I, lightly put it on there. And then I just started using not only the tool that comes with it, it comes with a little wooden stick, but I had some additional kind of scraper type things from my Cricut set. So those came in handy as well. And I just went through and started transferring the floral onto the table. And it's a little tedious, don't get me wrong. It took a while, a lot of patience, a lot of going back and forth, lifting very slowly and carefully to make sure that it was transferring properly. And when it wasn't, you had to just go over it a little bit more with some pressure. But ultimately, it transferred on beautifully, and I was just so excited. After the first transfer was on, I lined up the second one and then worked through the same process of rubbing it on, pulling the transfer paper back, rubbing it on, pulling the transfer paper back again. This did take some time and patience, like I said, but you guys, this thing came out so gorgeous. I was so happy with the way it turned out. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. It made this table just look that much nicer. It just gave it so much unique style, and I was just so in love with it, absolutely ecstatic about the way that it came out. It's just beautiful. This is such a beautiful transfer, and it really complemented that dark paint on the table. So I was so excited. Once I stood back for the bigger picture, I realized that the dry brushing I did, it was nice, but it would have just looked that much nicer with some additional color in there. So I actually had this custom color match pink that I was planning on using for a different project, and I figured if I just pull out a little bit of that pink and go over the overcast with the pink with that same dry brush method, it would just kind of blend in a little bit better with the transfer colors on top that had a lot of pink and purple tones. So that's what I did. I just got out the pink. I used the same exact method, onloading the paint very lightly onto the brush, offloading it onto the cardboard, and then going over it with a smaller brush on all the detailed parts, just to kind of give it more color and that much more character. So I was really happy with the way that it was coming out with the pink color. I loved the overcast until I put the transfer on. Once I put the transfer on the top, I knew I had to put in some color, and the pink was perfect. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Should I have left it with that overcast color, or did I make the right decision by adding in the pink? Because I'd like to know your opinion. I was happy with the pink, but pink is not always for everybody. So I'd love to know your comments and your thoughts about it. Once I had dry brushed the pink over everything and then all the paint had dried, I was ready to apply my clear wax. I used the Behr Decorative Wax in the color clear, and then just went over it with a wax brush. And you know, I was a little nervous at the top here. Like I said, it was my first time using a transfer, so I wasn't quite sure how delicate I needed to be on the top going over the transfer, but turns out it's adhered on there very well, so I was able to just go over it with the wax without a problem at all. I worked in sections with the wax, so I did the entire top part of the table, applied the wax all over it, and then I came back in with a lint-free wiping cloth, and then I just kind of wiped it or buffed it out, however you want to say that, but just went over it with that lint-free cloth, and then I moved on to the base of the table afterwards. I did a total of 1 coat of the clear wax on the entire piece, but then on the top I allowed for some dry time in between, and I actually put 4 layers of clear coat on the top just for that extra protection over the transfer. And here was our finished and final product, and I was super happy about it. I absolutely loved it. I think that the pink complemented the transfer very well. The transfer was absolutely beautiful. I will definitely be using transfers again on future projects. The detail was amazing. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Again, if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe. I will be coming out with new content weekly. I typically will be releasing a video on Wednesdays. So again, thanks for spending the time. participating in my journey. And I threw in a before picture at the end for your reference as well. So have a wonderful day.